Sorry that I'm a little late getting to some of these things today. I've been teaching, and uh, yeah, but I am very interested to go through the comments, and I'd like to pick out at least two of them. There's a big issue going on about whether or not the story about babies being beheaded is fake news or genuine. It hasn't been verified, but it it goes together with the um, taking of hostages, the using of people as human shields, the uh, um, savage killing of people at a festival, and the um, photographing and parading of prisoners of war. All of these things fit in very well with that particular story. It doesn't seem to me to matter whether it's true or false. I hope it's false, but the the issue is a distraction from the real problem, which is the horror of the Hamas event in the first place. That is compounded by the horror of the Netanyahu response. But to condemn Netanyahu is not to ignore the terrorist attack and to condone terrorism. It isn't. Now, there's a person who's pointed out here, rather extraordinarily, that I have that I so it's in response to the Grand Mufti of Wakanda. It's important to describe it as an Israeli war, isn't it, McProf? Just as you have to describe the war in Ukraine as Putin's war. Well, I don't entirely approve of Netanyahu calling for a war. He's not. Who is he calling for a war on? He's not calling for a war against Palestine. A war is a war between two countries. I don't see that Israel can have a war against the Gaza Strip, and so I think he's wrong. And I don't think that's inconsistent. I think Israel is perfectly entitled to defend itself. I think the savagery of the response is out of proportion to the offence. I think the offence is repugnant. And you've got a person here called BLM at 6744086 who says, yes, even our professor or anyone in the mainstream media won't call out Hamas as terrorists. On the contrary, I've consistently called out Hamas as terrorists, number one. Number two, I'm very proud that the king has referred to the attack against Israel as terrorism. And I am bewildered by the BBC's reluctance to describe Hamas as terrorists. I think it's very clear if you make it absolutely fundamentally black and white that Hamas are terrorists, then I think it is possible to start criticising the activity of Netanyahu, which I trust will be muted by the association with Gantz. And I hope there will be some moderation in the response. But I think the idea of collective punishment for the misdeeds of a terrorist organisation, even if that terrorist organisation has been elected to political office within a small group within the Gaza Strip, who is going to vote against Hamas? Who is going to vote against Hamas? Who would vote against a terrorist organisation on your doorstep? No, it's too terrifying to imagine. So I don't see an easy way to get rid of or to vote out Hamas. Hamas needs to be expelled from Gaza. Absolutely. But I don't think that bombing civilian structures is the way to do it. And I think that we need a humanitarian corridor. We need some sort of pause rather than bombs, we probably need soldiers on the ground, and we probably need an international force. But that is asking for quite a lot at a time when there's already a huge international event going on with Russia invading Ukraine. And we know there absolutely who is the villain in that case. But we also have to make sure that Ukraine does not overplay its hand. And during a war, and that is a war, whereas the Hamas Israel issue is not a war. It cannot be a war. We've not got two countries fighting each other. We've got one country responding to an appalling and abysmal terrorist event, which they're right to do, but not to punish an entire neighborhood for the terrorism that has been plotted in that area by a small and malignant minority. So during this time, of course, our eyes have been taken off Ukraine. Russia has launched an extraordinary attack, which has been repelled, but it's hardly gone noticed in the mainstream media because of this distraction. And I think we need an international response. I think we need international support, both to Israel and to Palestine and to Gaza. And that is why President Erdogan is to be praised for taking an initiative. That is why the Saudis are to be praised for responding. That is why the people in that part of the world, Qatar, Jordan, Turkey, are getting together to talk, because they see sense. Talking to each other is what needs to happen, not a lot of pontificating on YouTube and trying to decide whether or not babies have been beheaded, trying to work out what is fake, what is not fake news. All of that is an irrelevance, really. The relevant thing is to try to project positive support rather than to be constantly apportioning blame and constantly taking some sort of high moral ground. There is no high moral ground. As Varoufakis says very, very eloquently, we are to blame for not doing something earlier.